be alive in this land of ours. Good to drive in this land of ours.
Hello, Canada hockey fans in the United States.
The Hockey Time Machine.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Hockey Time Machine. I'm Glenn Dreyfus. There's only one way to welcome tonight's guest, Hall of Fame sports writer Frank Brown, and that's with Bruce Springsteen and some of the NHL stars who love the boss as much as Frank does.
I'm a big Bruce Springsteen fan. My first Bruce Springsteen concert was, I think, in 1979 at the Ottawa Civic Center. His daughter's a world-class show jumper on horses, and there's this big show. My daughter was in ponies at the time. Bruce is there watching his daughter. He's leaning over the rail, and I'm right there, and I'm like, I gotta go talk to him, because he used to go to the Ranger games a lot. I don't know if he still does. I'm like, I just couldn't work up the nerve to go talk to him. And
Maybe we were born to run.
I don't know if you were born to run, Frank, but you were born to write. Welcome to Hockey Time Machine.
Thank you. It's very, very, very nice to be with you, and it's particularly stirring to hear the Bruce Springsteen and the E Street Band introduction. The funny thing is that I, upon my retirement from the NHL, was presented with a goalie mask by my colleagues, and one of the on the back plate, the mask was painted by the gentleman who does many of the masks for the NHL goaltenders, and on the back of on my back plate is one of my favorite lines of Bruce's barefoot girl sitting on the hood of a Dodge drinking warm beer in the soft summer rain. And so it's touching to talk about the boss and also to talk about one of my enduring friendships through hockey, which is with Bruce's drummer Max Weinberg.
How many times have you seen them in concert?
Oh, I would say 50 or more.
Okay.
I just saw the first three shows, or actually three of the first four shows of the current tour, and they're going to be going for quite some time. So I'm sure it'll be a little bit more flexibility in the set list as we go along, but it's just exciting and really opportunity to enjoy some rock music history just to watch them perform.
Well, we alluded to your Hall of Fame status. The Professional Hockey Writers Association in 2019 named you winner of the Elmer Ferguson Award. Tell me about the day you found out, and if you had any advance hints that it was coming.
Didn't have any advance hints that it was coming. The ironic thing is that when I got the call from Mark Spector out in Edmonton, he was the president of the Pro Hockey Writers at the time. I was sitting in my home office, and the phone rang with a 780 area code. And usually I don't answer calls that aren't connected to my contact list, but I decided to answer this one. And it was Mark Spector. and there are some Weinbergs enjoying my Hall of Fame induction with me. There's Allie and Becky and Jay and his lovely wife, Chloe. In any event, Mark called, and it was March 31st. And I went, oh, wait a minute, tomorrow's April Fool's. This can't, nobody would joke with somebody who made a career of hockey writing. So I listened patiently, and he went, Frank, there are a lot of parts of this job that I don't enjoy very much, but this is one that I really do, and congratulations. And so that's the irony of the timing of the announcement. But I didn't have any foreknowledge that it was coming.
Well, like a true reporter, when you won the award, you did some research into the man it was named after, Elmer Ferguson. What did you find out?
Such an interesting individual, and for so many reasons that we could do an entire program on it, Glenn. But one of the interesting things was that one of Elmer Ferguson's first bosses at the Montreal Herald was Frank Calder, who was sports editor and hired Elmer, and then turned over the sports editorship to Elmer when Frank Calder went on to become the first president of the National Hockey League. The ironic thing is that Elmer was said to be the only journalist in the lobby of the Windsor Hotel when the National Hockey League was founded in 1917. In fact, he was with a competitor, a colleague named Peter Spanjart, who was the sports editor of the Star at the time. In any event, when the meeting announcing the formation of the league, or calling for the creation of the league, the formation of the league, finished, Calder and Elmer had a brief conversation. And Elmer said, "Hey, what went on up there?" And Calder said, "Oh, not very much."
Tight-lipped.
So, in any event, the two ironies from a historical standpoint, Spanjart, who was also around the Windsor Hotel that day, was at the time known as the Dean of Canadian Sports Writers. And after he passed away, Elmer assumed that nomenclature. He was called the Dean of Canadian Sports Writers at the time, and he actually ended up being a pallbearer at Spanjart's funeral when Spanjart passed away. Also of tremendous interest to me, Glenn, and probably to not many other people who remember what a typewriter is and was. Through a series of childhood accidents, Elmer lost really the most of the function in his left arm and the use of the fingers on his left hand. And if you see what I'm privileged to be holding at the Hockey Resource Center, which houses so many of the Hockey Hall of Fame artifacts, that's Elmer's typewriter, and it's heavy and it's hard to type on. So if you can imagine, Elmer really only typed with I assume the forefinger of his right hand. But imagining at the time that you had to change paper in the process of filing your story, and so many of the activities of using a typewriter and writing a story on a typewriter involve the need for dexterity, and Elmer couldn't do that. And yet, in one of the obituaries of his that I read, uh, it was reported that Elmer could turn out an 800-word column in 90 minutes. Now, that was a big challenge with two hands on a computer, but on carbon paper in a laptop, I mean in an actual typewriter, using one hand only, it's a marvel.
He could write with one hand tied behind his back, right?
He literally had to.
And also, we should mention, because we saw the plaque behind the photo of you with the typewriter, just like the great players who have trophies named after them, Elmer not only has an award, he won the award he was named after, or that was named after him.
It's very interesting, though, that he never he never had the chance to wear his Hall of Fame blazer, because Elmer passed away in 1972. The award was named or created in 1984. So it was, of course, posthumous for Elmer. But very, very interesting also to me from a historical standpoint was that because Elmer wrote for so many decades in Montreal, one of his more impressionable readers was Red Fisher, who referred in his biography to Elmer's word pictures as having been something of an inspiration to him. And it was Red, of course, the dean, the icon of hockey writers in Montreal, who worked with Clarence Campbell to have the award, to have PHWA members recognized in the Hall of Fame. And so there's Red, and myself. I was privileged when I was early on in, starting in the league to be part of a ceremony at which Red was honored for his 50th year at his newspaper, and so I presented a small memento on behalf of the league, and it was a real privilege to be in this photo with Red on the right, Henri Richard in the middle, and of course Jean Beliveau.
Well, I want to ask you one question about this photo. In the picture, you're laughing, but tell the truth. With these three Montreal legends, you would have laughed even if what they were saying wasn't funny, right?
I'm so sad that I don't remember exactly what the wisecrack was, but it was a prized moment. I had the opportunity to be in the photograph, and I really feel that probably one of the best compliments I was ever paid was by Red when I was. I don't even remember what we were talking about, but it was about, I don't know, changing jobs or something like that. And he said, "Well, I know I'd hire you," and that was as big a compliment. That was as big as a compliment as a young hockey writer from New York could ever have imagined receiving.
An American, no less.
Yep.
Yeah, good for you. Now, let's wind the time machine back to when we both had heads of hair. My dad took me to my first hockey game, Capitals versus Kansas City Scouts, as a 14th birthday present. And I was hooked. When your dad took you to your first hockey game, Canadiens at Rangers at the old MSG,
Yeah.
you said you were more than hooked. You were fixated. In fact, you were pierced right through the heart, even by the organist, even by watching the ice resurfacing.
Yeah. Every aspect of the experience profoundly impacted me. And it was, a time when, the youngsters in the audience would have no knowledge of this, but there were sticks made of wood. There were skates made of leather. And the slap of the puck off of a wooden stick, or even just a pass from one wooden stick to another, made such an amazing sound. And the skates on what at the time was barely one step above natural ice made an amazing swooshing sound. So the body contact and the oohs and the ahs and the
Yeah, my terrier doesn't like it when there's a closed door between me and her.
Well, I thought I was hearing the oohs and ahs of the crowd as I was describing it. In any event, every aspect of the experience, and this is 1965, just completely captivated me, and I'm sure it's captivated millions of other young people who aspired to have a life in the game and go on to have amazing experiences who never ended up getting the opportunity. And I consider myself profoundly blessed to have been able to be involved in the sport, to write about the sport, to work at the National Hockey League as I did, and I know how lucky I've been.
And this isn't any old hockey ticket we're showing here. You actually bought a Rangers season ticket with your own money working at a pizza parlor when you were 15 years old. How about that?
Yeah, that's actually I was all the way up to 20 the year that I saved that ticket, but I made sure that I saved every one of my 25-cent tips from delivering pizzas, and sometimes I'd be lucky enough to get $1, but the truth of it was, at the end of the 60s, you could get a season ticket for I think I paid $97.50 for my season ticket in section 417, row C, seat 11, right on the aisle, and I would go to every game, and I would keep I had a scorebook that I kept on my lap, and recorded every penalty, every shot, every the shots by period, and every goal, and it was awesome.
In the early 70s, the Maven Stan Fischler takes you under his wing. How did you become part of his flock?
I was at the time working as a copy boy with the Associated Press through another of my mentors, Hal Bach, who is a legendary hockey writer in his own right, and actually I was also working with Ben Olin, who is another member of the Elmer Ferguson fraternity and sorority, I should add, because of Helene Elliott. In any event, Hal and Stan at the time were friends and colleagues, and Stan was always looking for for interns and people who could do tasks for him. And I so wanted to learn about the art of writing, much, and of course hockey writing, that we worked it out that I would work a few hours a week in his home office on 110th Street. So I would be going to Hunter College during the day. I would be working for Stan in the afternoons, and then I would go to my AP job often at night. But Stan really taught me a pivotal life lesson about, just having having belief in yourself. And one day he pressed a slip of paper into my hand, and he said, "Here's Gordie Howe's phone number. Call him up and get a comment on this, that, or the other thing." I don't remember what was going on at the time, but I said, "Stan, well, I'm just a kid. Why would he talk to me?" And Stan replied, "Hey, you're a member of the media. Why wouldn't he speak to you?" And I do recall that I reached Gordie and that I did speak with him. I don't remember anything about the conversation, but it was a lesson that just truly resonated with me as I was really still in my teens, and I was like, "Well, I guess that's something I need to carry forward."
You mentioned it being a sorority as well as a fraternity. Stan's wife, Shirley, was also a sports writer. Did you have much interaction with her?
Oh yeah, because she was a vibrant element of the home office, often working on either her own show on WABC radio, or working on hockey books with Stan, or working on hockey stories of her own. So she was a vibrant, hard-nosed hockey writer, and it was she was also an extremely courageous person on a lot of levels, but not the least of which was her attempt to break the gender barrier that existed at the time relative to membership in the Pro Hockey Writers Association,
which she ultimately succeeded at.
Ultimately, yes.
So this blows my mind. You joined the Associated Press at the age of 20, and by the age of 22, when the aforementioned Hal Box steps aside, you're named National Hockey Editor. What?
Listen, I felt exactly the same way. It was an incredible. It was incredible just to get a tryout, and it was incredible at the time when I was hired. At the time when I was hired in 1970, I said, what I'd really like is I'll do this for the entirety of my college career, or what remains of my college career. But when I graduate, I would value the opportunity to get a tryout to go on staff. And Murray Rose, who interviewed me at the time, said, "Yeah, sure, kid." I can't imagine that he truly expected that I would stay the three and a half more years, or however long it took to graduate, and to call him to his word. But when that time came, he stood by it. And I got my tryout. I passed, and Hal was moved over to a column, so hockey became available. And really, in the 70s, hockey was not a particularly sought after beat. It was a great beat, and that being said, it was something of a niche, of a sort of an idiom that not too many people could translate. So I was fortunate enough to get a tryout at the job, and that's how it worked out. So I was at the All-Star game in Montreal, actually, in 1975, when Robin Herman of the Times was one of the first women admitted to an NHL locker room, and I was at the final, the Buffalo-Philadelphia final in 1975, when Jim Lorentz reached up into the vapors of the auditorium in Buffalo and smacked a flying bat out of the air.
We're going to go through your history, but before we do that,
I should
you
say,
were nice-
I should just finish the story, Glenn, because once the bat was prone on the ice, everybody stared around and like going like, I'm not picking that up. Are you? Who's going to pick that up? And so ultimately, I'm virtually sure it was Kevin Collins who was one of the linesmen at that game, and Kevin was fearless, and I believe he picked it up and
did that make it into your game story?
I don't honestly recall, but I remember vividly that all of these tough guys staring at each other, going, "I'm not touching that."
Well, you were smart enough, Frank, to keep your myriad of press passes throughout the decades and kind enough to share them with us. And from where I sit, Jackson Pollock never painted anything more beautiful than what we're looking at.
Well, it's a lot of tonnage and a lot of memories, and there are some press passes there from the Le Colisée in Quebec City, and lots of arenas that no longer exist, but or lots of NHL arenas that no longer exist. Le Colisée, I believe, is still there, but it is literally overwhelming to just spread all those experiences on the table and remember the arenas, remember the games, remember the stories, remember the people. And just going back to Elmer Ferguson again, Elmer covered the first game, the first Canadiens home game at the Montreal Forum. I covered the last one.
Well, let's go through using those press passes, some of them. Let's use those as a tour guide to go through some of the famous hockey moments you've seen in person. And we'll start in a place you already mentioned, Philadelphia. The Stanley Cup Finals in 1975, there is the press pass. In a second, I want to talk to you about that famous or infamous Flyers versus Soviet Army game in 76. But first, tell me about the age of the Broad Street Bullies and the love affair between the team and the city.
The thing that Ed Snyder did so well was he reacted in a very angry and passionate way when the Flyers were involved in a series with the St. Louis Blues a few years before the Broad Street Bullies era began. And he felt that his team was pushed around, and he said that's never going to happen again. And of course, people who have lived in the hockey time machine know that the Broad Street Bullies were the toughest, probably the toughest team of the 70s, or certainly the toughest team in the 70s, and that includes the supposed Big Bad Bruins, who are pretty good too. But the funny thing about the more subtle aspect of the skill that that Flyers team had was they were so good at killing penalties because they got so much practice at it. So one hand kind of washed the other in terms of,
I think one hand punched the other.
But the point is, they were confident that they could play as aggressively as they did and take as many penalties as they did because they killed penalties as well as they did. Of course, with when Bernie Parent was able, he was as good as they came. And, but also it was the players, the Oris Kinderchucks who won all those faceoffs and so forth, who really, really made a difference. That was a really good defense. And and just really a really good team. And of course, that part of their history is less spoken about because so much of the attention and the focus was on the fighting that they lived by and ultimately died by it when the Montreal Canadiens got a hold of them.
The pass on the right is from that Flyers exhibition against the Soviets in 1976. Frank, for those who don't know it, tell us the surreal story of that game and what it was like covering it.
Well, I'll back up the wagon a little bit because lots of memorable things happened at the Spectrum, and one of them was this was during the really pitched rivalry between the NHL and the World Hockey Association, and there had been a Board of Governors meeting earlier in the day, and of course, at the time in the 70s, Clarence Campbell would address the media, and he happened to be in the Spectrum press room that day. And one thing about Mr. Campbell was there was always he would sit down, prepare to address the media, and someone would always put a glass of orange juice in front of him for his refreshment. But I'll never forget, he began his remarks by saying, "Well, we got sued again by the WHA," and this was a common refrain from Mr. Campbell. That was in the same press room where subsequently, or at another time, there was nothing but bedlam going on because the Flyers played this game against the visiting Russian team so viciously and took so many slashes, so many big hits and so forth, that the coach pulled the Russian team off the ice and they threatened to go home. So the press room was sort of between the two dressing rooms, and there was all kinds of scurrying back and forth, from one room to the other. And subsequently, there was the message was made very, very clear to the visiting team that if you leave, you won't be getting paid the agreed upon stipend for your appearance in this game. And so suddenly the team reappeared.
And what is you, as a writer, what were you thinking?
Just another day at the Spectrum at that time. I mean, you came to expect the unexpected. But, I also remember at the Spectrum covering the game when Mario Lemieux woke up in Pittsburgh, went to the hospital for his 22nd radiation treatment for his Hodgkin's, and then got on a plane and flew to Philadelphia to play in the Spectrum that night to receive a standing ovation. One of the few from the Spectrum crowd.
Wow. Before we leave the 70s, Flyers style hockey, because leagues are leagues of imitation. If it works, we're going to copy it. And Flyers style hockey had infected the entire league. And from reading some of your pieces, it seemed like at one point you had enough with some of the shenanigans. From a pair of essays in 1978, you called stick swinging incidents a, quote, crisis, saying someone is going to get killed unless concerted, definitive action is taken. And in a separate essay, you tackled premeditated assaults on the ice, calling them carnage that drags the sport into the sewer. And it seemed to me, reading these, you were worried about the game you loved.
I was. I was, and I can't, represent that I had, any foresight as to, what the future of the game would be if this continued. But I always, because of remembering that kid who was, literally pierced through the heart with love for the game and the beauty of it, that I saw that first night when I was at Madison Square Garden in 1965, I felt just complete sorrow that the artistry was being diminished or defaced by just the predominance of fighting. It wasn't necessary, and stick swinging was a factor. It was still a factor in the 70s, and there were some catastrophic injuries that resulted.
On to happier memories, specifically the first half of 1980, where the first half of the year was just filled with magic moments that you were witness to. And the first one was the All-Star game in Detroit, Gordie Howe's return to Joe Louis Arena.
Yeah. And it was actually just shortly after Joe Louis had opened, in fact. And there aren't too many arenas that you can say it about, and I'm sure that the sentimental fans in Detroit would disagree with me violently. But it was one of the arenas that was still built in a more or less. It was the state of the art at the time, but the state of arena art at that time wasn't very, very particularly good. And it was a huge capacity venue, 19,000, 20,000, but it was very Spartan in terms of its amenities, and the press box was laughably tight and narrow. Two people couldn't pass each other without turning to the side. So that being said, the number of astonishingly great moments there were abundant, to be sure. And that moment when Gordie Howe was introduced to, a tremendous ovation as Wayne Gretzky, the NHL rookie, stood nearby, was just a moment that provided the same amount of chills as, say, the All-Star, the anthem at the All-Star game in Chicago Stadium when the war in the Middle East was ongoing. I mean, if you have YouTube footage of that anthem, the cameras, the picture literally is shaking from the way that Chicago Stadium was trembling from the passion and from, of course, the organ. So between Joe Louis and Chicago Stadium, they were great old places, but they were old places. I'll take today's arenas anytime.
Maybe the most famous AP story under a Frank Brown byline came February 2nd in Lake Placid, New York. By the way, who is the guy in that picture?
I don't know, hair and a mustache. What is that?
Well, anyway, your story about the USSR hockey game and how it finished started this way. Mark Johnson and Mike Eruzione scored goals in a 1:21 span of the third period Friday, giving the determined United States hockey team a stunning 4-3 upset triumph over the Soviet Union. Frank, they always say there's no cheering in the press box. But what about this evening?
Well, Associated Press is like Dragnet, or the Associated Press at the time was like Dragnet, and Detective Joe Friday in the Dragnet show of the 60s or 70s, I don't remember which, always said just the facts, only the facts. And as an AP writer at the time, the spot news story was to provide only the facts. So to even use the term stunning in an AP story was hyperbole at the time, but it was so enormous. It was such an enormous global story at the time that the editors approved it. So, even though it's just the facts, there are times when you have to elevate, you have to rise to the occasion, so to speak.
The thing I want to really know is, were you having to keep your own emotions in check?
I did, but I will tell you that after the U.S. flag rose to the ceiling at the field house on Sunday, after the gold medal had been achieved, I did stand in the press box with my hand over my heart and sing the anthem as the flag rose upwards. It was one of those moments of license I allowed myself to undertake.
And what was it like in the arena those 2 days, the Friday and the Sunday against Finland, and in the Olympic Village?
If you imagine any heavyweight fight, any Stanley Cup game, any hugely important arena event, there is an energy, there is an electricity, there is just a crackling amount of emotion. And the Friday of the Russian game was it was there in earnest, even if it wasn't enough to get the American networks to show the game live. They showed it on delay, as was covered in last week's show. There was so much emotion and so much patriotic fervor, so much flag waving because of the political situation with the political matters in Afghanistan and bombing Russia and so forth. That was the subplot. One of many subplots. The other subplot was, of course, the American college kids, the American amateurs, undoing the Russian professionals. I will tell you, though, that the entire tournament, and I had gone from covering the 10-3 Russian rout of Team USA at the Garden. I had flown up to Lake Placid, actually on the flight with Team USA, and they were shaken. But the Russian team had what I felt was a terrible Olympics. They were so much better, or they felt they were so much better than their opposition, that they were able to, and this was one of their trademarks, they would turn it on. They would come out in the first 5 minutes of a period, and they would also turn it on in the last 5 minutes of a period, and they would command the third period. And when they went into overdrive, teams were not generally able to stay with them. And I think, as you mentioned in the show last week about the Canadian game, the Canadian team played a phenomenal game against Russia, but Russia in that last part of the second period and the entirety of the third period just really, really played like the team it should have been. But earlier in the tournament, they beat, I think it was Japan 16-0, and they looked lousy doing it. They looked fat and lazy. They looked, indifferent, uninterested, and so of course I said, well, they didn't need to. They could have won 100-0. It wouldn't have mattered. But as the tournament continued, that pattern continued as well. And I'm not in any way diminishing the American triumph, not in any way. But Tretiak had struggled. Okay, he had struggled particularly with long shots, and of course, you'll recall the goal that came with 1 second left in the first period, which was an incredibly impactful moment. Was off a rebound from a long shot. So, in any event, the Russian team was there to be beat, but then you have to do it.
Yeah.
You have to beat them, and that was the stunning. If that wasn't stunning enough, set against the political backdrop, you truly had nitrogen and glycerin for an explosive event.
We must also mention, because Frank Brown would be too modest to do this, that Frank Brown came to the rescue at Lake Placid after the West Germany versus Norway hockey game.
Well, I can tell you that technology was not what it is today, and the scoring system went down. They didn't have a statistical sheet on which to keep score of the game, and so I had to volunteer one of the pre-printed ones. I had photocopied or mimeographed. I don't recall exactly what it was, but I had brought a bunch of extra sheets with me to Lake Placid to make sure I could score on my own, keep track of things, keep track of the stats, and just like my days in the mezzanine at Madison Square Garden. And so I had to provide one to the facility so that they could have a score sheet, a proper score sheet for the game.
Well done, Frank. You saved Olympic hockey. But wait, we're not done with Frank Brown's 1980 Magical Mystery Tour. Where's that third press credential? Here it is. The 1980 Stanley Cup Finals. You're hired away from AP to write hockey for the New York Daily News, and you pull the press box version of a Ken Morrow. Like Morrow, you go from the Miracle on Ice to an Islanders Stanley Cup.
Yeah, and it's another one of the Spectrum press room moments for me, because it was at that final. I was covering for Associated Press, and I'm sitting in the press room having the first of my hundreds of cups of coffee in the pregame moments. And
were you like a Clarence Campbell? Was there anything besides coffee in your coffee?
No, there was nothing but coffee in the cup. And a fellow walked up to me, introduced himself, and said, "Hi, I'm Buddy Martin, sports editor of the New York Daily News, and I'm going to hire you. I've already talked to your boss." And I went, okay. How do you say no? How do you say no? And the interesting thing that seems to have happened was, with Associated Press, of course, that was a dominant sports news service at the time. It remains so, but the media universe has changed so. But it was like getting your resume in 1,200 newspapers a day. Similar to that, when you're in the news, and particularly writing about hockey, there there's a possibility that some commissioners or potential commissioners might be reading you every day.
Mhm.
Like, once again, it's like getting your resume, out into the public eye. So the news hired me, and although I ended up finishing, it was actually right after that final, the 1980 final, in which Ken Morrow played such a prominent role that I was hired by the news and started covering him as an Islander, and later covered the other three of the 4 consecutive Stanley Cups that the Islanders generated in their dynasty.